Hello to everyone, and thank you again for joining. Welcome to today's webinar, The Rise of Mobile Robotics. So in this session, we're going to look at autonomous mobile robots as a solution that helps counteract labor shortages and supply chain deficiencies. We'll be highlighting the Fetch Robotics platform, in addition to reviewing various workflows and AMR solutions by industry. Again, before we get started, just make a note that this webinar is being recorded. We will be sending out a copy of that recording within the next few days. So keep an eye out for that. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them to the Q&A box. We'll address them as we go, and we'll have a brief minute for some Q&A at the end of the webinar as well. Moving on, I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers. First, we have Manthan Pawar. Manthan is the product manager of autonomous mobile robotics at Barcodes. He oversees the orchestration of robotics business plans and go-to-market strategy. Manthan has spent most of his career in the robotics business, business development, program management, product management, engineering, and research. At Barcodes, he is focused on building and growing end-to-end AMR solutions and integration infrastructure, catering to manufacturing, logistics, and supply chain automation. Prior to getting into the AMR industry, Manthan ventured into the medical robotics space as an entrepreneur and consultant. He has authored 4 publications with IEEE in robotics research. He received a Master of Science in Robotics from New York University and a Bachelor of Technology in Manufacturing and Industrial Management from COEP Technological University. Our next speaker is David Lin. David Lin is a mobile robotics expert at Zebra Technologies for the Fetch Robotics portfolio. He has over 18 years of experience working in various program management roles in global manufacturing and distribution industries, including e-commerce operations. Currently, he is the product manager at Zebra Robotics Automation, leading strategic initiatives for autonomous mobile robot solutions. And then we'll just take a quick look at the agenda here. Manthan will be covering some of the macro trends affecting industries today, and how AMRs serve as an efficient solution that meets the industry's evolving demands. David will then dive a little bit deeper into AMR solutions and types, their deployment and integration, common workflows that they help automate, and so forth. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Manthan.
Thanks, Brandon, for the introduction. Today, I want to start with some of the major issues we are facing today and how it's shaping the robotics industry as well as the supply chain industry for long term. Today we are seeing a world where there is a looming recession. Experts say it's a combination of inflation, the war in Ukraine, the supply chain disruption is adding fuel to it, and we want to look into more in the widths of it, exactly what's happening, right? So first, we all hate this graph. What this graph shows us is the supply chain pressure index, and you can see how it's ticking up since COVID, and it's not stopping. So there are reasons behind it, right? And on the other hand, when we look at how record high the supply chain index is since COVID, it's getting worse. The key reason we are observing is the labor shortage, unemployment, and recession. They are of a different equation usually. In the past, whenever there is a recession happening or is looming, two things happen. The GDP decreases and the unemployment rate increases. But this is first time in the US history where we are seeing there are more job openings than number of people to fill them, meaning the unemployment rate is actually record low. On the other hand, where the GDP is declining. So it becomes clear to us how dire the situation is for some of our industries in manufacturing, warehouse distribution, how painful it is to find labor, find associates, even for seasonal demands, and how do you hire fast, how do you train fast, and things like that. So every customer we are talking today is showing interest in robotics, coming from a pain where hiring is really difficult nowadays. So in this world, we see a robotics as a solution. I've had a customer with our partner who don't really care about ROI, but the outcome that I heard from this customer is really they cannot find forklift drivers or associates. They need someone to do that job, but there are not enough forklift drivers and associates to manage the warehouse workflows and manufacturing workflows. So we see robotics is the solution. There are these issues happening in the back, but on the other hand, the customer demand is not showing any sign of slowing down. What used to be a 7-day delivery is now a 2-day delivery. What used to be a 2-day delivery is now a same day or even hours within the click of button. And we are seeing the shift in this entire industry of customer demand and how it's increasing, and how the demand is that customer wants their goods as soon as possible. Ultimately, every company who's able to fulfill these promises of 1-day delivery or a same-day delivery, the robotics adoption has been a key behind all of this. Almost every item we touch today that's coming from Amazon Prime has touched a robot behind the scene, behind the process. So we are seeing this shift. Along with this, I know some of our customers and you all may be facing is this entire industry is moving towards a lot into flexibility, right? The questions I'm being asked is, can your automation increase efficiency and throughput for my Black Friday? Can it adapt to seasonal changes, right? Or inconsistency in requirements? Can it adapt to that, guys? When we look at hiring and training, it has become harder and harder ever, and with the hiring and training with your fluctuating demand. And also, the question also arises, can your traditional automation be easily scaled and descaled according to this fluctuating demand? Usually, the answer with some of the traditional automation has been no. I'll take an example of a simple conveyor system, right? Can your conveyor system increase throughput during a high peak season, right? Can we add more conveyors during this seasonal demand changes? Usually the answer is no, because obviously this is an automation that is a fixed automation bolted down to a floor, usually is not scalable and cannot be changed. And lastly, are you using your floor space in an optimized manner? Or are you losing this really valuable real estate, which we know it's a really important thing in our industry to optimize workflows. So these are all the questions that come to our mind when in today's supply chain world. And then we discussed some of this, why mobile robotics and why it's been so important. It brings you higher operational throughput and speed. It reduces the unproductive travel time for your associates so that associates can focus more on what is important, right? Tasks that are more important. And then robots can do the travel, the unproductive travel, taking the goods away and then towards the replenishment or whatever the workflow is. Increase your storage density, right? Using robots, you're able to now store with a higher density or also manage your floor space better, which David's gonna explain how it's gonna happen. And then also bring flexibility, and how it's really achieved is adding robots is now faster than hiring. Using some of the models that we have been seeing today is a robot as a service, right? As a service model, which becomes really easy to deploy these robots or remove them whenever required. And all this comes with a really short return on investment. We are seeing a shift of robotics ROI from 1 to 2 years now, even going into months. So this is fascinating, and we are really excited for the future. And today we are really excited to showcase some of the applications that we can solve for our customers. We are able to solve automation issues for customers in warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, and e-commerce, and much more, which you can find on our website and the link at the end of this webinar. David's gonna cover a few. Obviously, we cannot cover all the solutions, but he's going to stick to some of the important solutions. And we at Barcodes really bring this end-to-end integration, deployment, and support infrastructure, where we design your custom design or workflows with multiple AMRs and not just one type. Consult on a solution, deploy these robots and integrate with your existing infrastructure, and also provide support after they are deployed. So, with all this, I'm going to pass it on to David, who's going to drill down and focus more on the solutions. So David, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Manthan. Appreciate that. All right. 1 second, let me just make sure I have Shmuel here. Oops. Okay. All right. Sorry, everyone. Just want to make sure I can move stuff around here. I think I got it now. Well, thanks, Manthan, and the Barcodes team. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some more thoughts on automation and robotics. I mean, certainly all the themes that Manthan just mentioned, it's echoed on the Zebra side. Some of you may know we do this warehouse vision study at Zebra on an annual basis, and we kind of poll a lot of our customers, and we're getting the same feedback, right? The labor challenges that Manthan mentioned, the need for flexibility, and the impact of greater customer demands. This is all kind of creating a perfect storm for our customers, where they're saying, hey, I know I need to automate, I know I need to do something here, but then how exactly do we do it? And so so what I want to do is a couple things. One, I want to drill into the hardware a little bit. Like, what are we exactly talking about when we say mobile robotics? Okay, so that's one. And then the bigger picture, which is how do we leverage this flexible automation into the end-to-end workflows that Manthan mentioned? How do we solve your problems related to labor, right? Related to flexibility. It's not all just about hiring, it's about retaining the people you have and then making them more efficient by collaborating with AMRs. So right here, you're just getting a quick view of the Zebra Fetch portfolio available through barcodes. And essentially, when I break the hardware down, when you kind of take a look at these systems, if you will, it consists of generally three parts, 2 or 3 parts. So we have a mobile robot base, and on top of that is a top module that's customized for specific payload or capacity going from left to right. You know, we've designed AMR systems to carry payloads from 150 pounds all the way up to 3,300 pounds, right? You can do the case movement, batch picking, order picking, transport eaches, totes, bins, and of course the full unit load as well. So it kind of runs the gamut of different material types. And that's really at the core of the solution. What we have designed are robots that are collaborative with people, and that basically take over the long haul manual transport of material. Again, that's sort of our the core competency, and then that's the portion that we're trying to solve. And I'll kind of go into a little bit details on how you can actually apply those. So then I also want to give a quick primer, as you may have heard of AGVs, or automated guided vehicles, right? And how that's different from a modern AMR. And there's a couple of differences, key differences. If you look at the image on the left here, this is a typical AGV. Now, generally, the AGVs travel on a fixed path. You'll see that there may be, magnetic tape on the floor, or some kind of, fiducial fixed infrastructure. So they have to travel along a fixed path. Well, an AMR is pretty much autonomous. It can travel wherever you have mapped it to go. And then as a result, there's a couple things where we have an advantage over an AGV, for example. So if, again, looking at the image on the left, AGVs practice, simple collision avoidance. What that means is, if you look at the front AGV here, if there was an obstacle on that track, basically that AGV has to stop in place, and then everything else behind it is then bottlenecked, right? Essentially, it's just, it's kind of like a train on a track, right? So if you block it, it's stuck. Whereas on an AMR, we have onboard intelligence, so that allows us to dynamically replan and avoid obstacles in real time, so that we can actually go around stuff, right? So then it speaks to the efficiency of the AMRs, but it's also, again, it's that collaborative element. They're all designed to work around people, around forklifts, as you see, by navigating autonomously. All right, so speaking about the AGVs and how they're a little bit more like fixed infrastructure, with our solution specifically, since it's cloud-based, it's very quick to deploy, as Manthan mentioned. What we're trying to achieve is a greater time to value, right? If compared to, for example, Manthan mentioned a conveyor system. It could take something like months to design and install and anchor to your floor. Even in AGV, there's still infrastructure that needs to get installed. With the Zebra Fetch solution, it's just a few steps here. And essentially is, the Barcodes team shows up with robots that fit your application. We'll connect the robots to your existing Wi-Fi. So we don't require any, for example, like a dedicated network or anything special for the robots that can run on your existing Wi-Fi. We do want a good signal, strong signal. And then we'll map the facility. And what that entails is we're digitizing your entire shop floor or production floor or your warehouse floor into a cloud-based map, so that the robots can use for navigation. And the great thing about this is, first of all, we can map around 1 million square feet in less than a day. But once you have your facility mapped, that's where some of this flexibility comes in, because you can add or modify or change workflows essentially on the fly. And that's really the step 4 here. We have cloud-based software. Again, it's this drag and drop interface where you don't have to be a robotics engineer, to program the robot. But we have something called Workflow Builder, where you can create a sequence of robot actions to then perform the workflows that you need for specific use cases. And this is something that you can work with the Barcodes team to set up templates, but then you can add or modify or change on the fly down the road. And then essentially you're starting work. Now, one thing to remember with this, and we've had customers that deploy our solution out of the box, and they're literally set up in about 3 days. They're up and running that quickly, and that is without a hard integration. Now you can integrate with your WES, your WMS, your MES, for example, in case of manufacturing, and that gives you an added layer, right, of optimization and orchestration. But you don't have to. You can kind of grow into that. And again, you can work with the Barcodes team to really determine what's the best fit for your operations. Okay, so now you have AMR set up. Okay, that's great. They're going to be moving around and stuff like that. Well, how do we work with the AMRs? How do we interact with them? How do we collaborate with them? And there are several options that we offer with our solution. So you can control or trigger AMRs using a tablet, for example, or even a smartphone. Again, when I say trigger, I'm talking about initiating a robot action, for example, picking up at location A and delivering it to location B, vice versa. You can certainly leverage a Zebra mobile device or any Android-based handheld mobile computer to trigger as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. With our software, you can schedule robot runs, pickups, drop-offs just in the software. And we do it very similar to like scheduling a meeting in Outlook, right? You can say, hey, I want this robot to drop off at these stations, every 20 minutes or something like that. And then the ultimate kind of collaboration with devices is using, for example, like a wearable on the human associate. And the way this works is if you have an overarching WES system or optimization layer, what we can do is integrate with that. And now you have a wearable device on the human associate, and that system is also connected to our AMRs via our Fetch Core software. So then now the orchestration layer or optimization layer can send the robot and the human to the same place at the same time. And that's really the highest level of efficiency that we can achieve. It's dynamic orchestration, as we call it. But you don't have to do that right off the bat. Again, we can work with the devices that you have, or in some cases there's an interface directly on the robot that you can use for interaction as well. Just different options to help you gain the highest efficiency. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of jump into well, this is great. We have all this, these robots and technical details, but then talk a little bit about how we can actually use these. And when I go through these, what my hope is that you're thinking about your own operations and how you could use one or more of these, or maybe in a modified format, or combining some of these. And that's the beauty of the AMRs that we provide, is because you can change the workflows on the fly, or you can schedule them as needed. So for example, just real quick, is you could be running a work cell delivery operation with your AMRs during your first shift. And then you can switch that up to a put away workflow for second shift, for example, using the same robots on the same platform in the same space. Okay, so that's the kind of flexibility that AMRs allow. So what I have here are some manufacturing solutions that we're seeing. There's some featured AMRs that do carry different payloads and operate a little bit differently. You'll see our Car Connect solution here. This is an interesting application because what happens with Car Connect is that the robot can pick up and detach from the cart. Okay, so oftentimes we see this when you have a human associate, using the cart, to load and unload. But again, it increases the robot utilization because the robot can be doing other stuff while the human is interacting with the cart. But work cell delivery, this is certainly transporting raw materials to assembly stations, to work cells, similar to line side delivery, where you're perhaps transporting bulk materials into a production area, but it's also transporting within your WIP, your work in progress, for example. And it doesn't have to be sequential. It could be completely non-linear. And I'll show you in a sec. We have a customer using it to replace their conveyor, and they don't necessarily have to go in a specific sequence like you would with a conveyor and a progressive line. Okay, milk runs is the sort of the classic, get the material and drop off at certain spaces at certain times. I like to leverage this for floor stock delivery, for example. So we've been talking about how do we get non-inventory items, consumables, bags of screws, tape, those types of things out to the floor to make sure they're replenished all the time and keep that line moving. And cycle counting, this is with a very specific AMR we have called Tag Surveyor, which essentially patrols your storage aisles, your production area, actively reading RFID tags. If you do tag your components or materials with RFID, is a good complement to doing manual cycle counts or physical inventory, even using a handheld RFID reader, for example. So you can automate that whole process. You can have a robot running overnight, and then in the morning, you'll have your inventory report ready to go. Okay, so I wanted to share this with you. This is a customer use case where they're doing work cell delivery. This is specifically using our roller top AMR, and the roller top is essentially our mobile base with a little motor conveyor on it with photo eyes. And essentially, this is a custom apparel manufacturer. And what they do is mass customization, right? They're taking online orders for a customized piece of apparel that then drops to their shop floor. Fabric gets cut, and then a human puts those work pieces into a barcoded tote, and then the robot just takes it from there, right? And because there's millions of different combinations of a SKU for them. You may not go from station A to station B. You might need to go to station A to get, a pocket sewn on. You might need to go to station E to get a collar attached, right? So it keeps the skilled technicians, the sewers in this case, at their stations, right? And the robots are doing all the material transport in between the stations automatically. Because the robot can both discharge and induct these totes from station to station. And what we saw with this example is the customer actually was able to replace a significant amount of conveyor. I think it was over 1,500 feet or something in that range. And again, as Manthan mentioned, regaining that space. We know that real estate in these facilities is like gold, right? So retaining that space back, using it for storage, using it for production, instead of just, feet of conveyor. But they also increased their production capacity significantly by 3x. Why? Well, because, their associates are no longer spending time, grabbing material and moving it to their station. So again, it's about that repurposing, reallocating the valuable labor that you do have to skilled tasks. Okay, switching over to some warehousing applications now. A few that we're seeing are quite popular are these inbound movements. So for example, receiving materials off a trailer and then either decanting them, putting them onto one of our fetch carts, and then having the robot transport the material into storage. And some of you in the poll had mentioned, pallet movements, and we're seeing this as well with our larger robots. I didn't put this as a featured AMR, but I should have. But we do have a what we call a pallet transport 1500, which can pick up and drop off pallets, right? So you can also set that up off a P&D station. So again, inbound, unloading a trailer, you'll need a forklift operator to drop that pallet onto a P&D, but the robot then takes it that long haul, right? Mantha mentioned it's very difficult to find certified, qualified lift drivers these days. Well, if you can keep them, in particular areas and not spending time, driving around, around a 1 million square foot facility, then you'll make your operation a lot more efficient. Now, replenishment is sort of going from now you have materials in storage. Now we have to move that material into forward picking, for example. So again, it's just to kind of preload your forward pick just to make sure it's stocked. We're seeing that application as well in warehousing. Another very interesting one is this transport from to and from VLMs, the storage carousel. So in order to save space, a lot of you are kind of looking towards, vertical solutions, and sometimes horizontal solutions as well, storage solutions. But then how do you get that material to the next step, right? It might be out to the manufacturing floor. It might be directly to your a shipment put wall. It might be to a repair station. In our case, Zebra is actually using this solution, AMR solution, in one of our repair facilities, actually. And so a human associate will pick components from the VLM and then put it in a tote, add it to a robot, then send it directly to a repair technician. Now, returns is another area that we're kind of looking at as well, and we have some customer interest in this. This is we're kind of scoping this as Mantha mentioned the seasonal spikes, and especially with the holiday season coming up, and scaling up for that. But certainly, come January, when you start to see returns spike up as well, dispositioning that material once you have it received back. Getting it to transporting that material to an area where it could get returned to vendor, or if it's scrap, or if it can get refurbished or remanufactured. Again, it's about keeping that dock clear and getting that material where it needs to be, all automatically. So I mentioned the kind of the put away solution, and this was a use case where we had a automotive contract manufacturer customer, and they were spending a lot of time. They were also shorthanded. They were having a lot of trouble, a lot of difficulty hiring in their area. And so what they did was they implemented a Car Connect solution for the inbound put away. And what they would do essentially is once the material arrives overseas via trailer, they would unload it and then get it decanted, put it into totes, receive it into the system, right? This is all done by a human associate. Then what the associate would do is load that material onto our fetch cart here. And in this case, they have integrated handheld scanners. So what they would do is, it's probably a little bit hard to see, but if you see these 3 little labels on the cart itself, that's actually a 2D barcode, which they could scan. And that sends a signal to our system via the cloud. And it says, hey, pick up this cart at this location and then transport it to this storage location. And that's all done completely in the background. The associate just has to simply scan that barcode, and then they can immediately move on to the next task. So in this way, they actually saved, they essentially eliminated all their overtime, because they were spending, they didn't have enough associates. The only way they could receive materials in was after hours, actually. So this really saved them a lot of time, using the human resources that they had, making them more efficient. I mentioned the VLM induction and delivery. We have another customer here where they're using horizontal carousels. Okay, and this is in a distribution application. Well, once we got the material over and loaded into the carousel, well, they have a human associate which picks out of there, right? So then, in this case, what they did was they also replaced conveyor with AMRs. They basically hit a cap as far as their throughput with their previous conveyor, and they could not support that increased customer demand. Again, that month I mentioned, it's like, there's a spike in demand. Well, they're maxed out. Their only other solution was to move to a different facility, which was be very, very painful and not practical at the time. So what they did was they ended up removing conveyor, replacing it with the AMRs. And then so now you have this dynamic material movement between the carousels, and they use a put wall for shipping. By removing the conveyor, not only did they increase their throughput by 25%, but they also had enough space to install another storage carousel. So again, they're just kind of increasing their overall output capacity. And they mentioned to us that essentially extended the lifespan of their facility by like 5 years. So they're very excited about using AMRs, and I'll kind of come back to that in a second in this one, because as I mentioned before, because of the flexibility with the mobile robots, they can be doing multiple applications. They multitask essentially, right? And I'll touch upon that in a quick second here on how that could work for you. All right, so quickly, value-added solutions. These are use cases that you may see in a 3PL, for example. We talked about transporting raw materials components to production in a manufacturing facility. Well, you could do the same if you're doing, for example, like a kitting operation. We had some customers doing these subscription boxes where they need to merge multiple products into one box, and that works well. That's a good fit for mobile robotics for sure. If you need to transport picked items to for example, like a non-standard process, like maybe something needs personalization, private labeling, or even like a gift wrap station or something like that, the robots can do it instead of, again, manually transporting something over, then bringing it back, then getting it back into the standard, outbound flow. The robots can handle all that transport as well. We talked a little about the returns and repairable items. We're seeing some uptick in these like kind of remanufacturing operation and recycling and reusable products once they're dispositioned by a human associate, right? Once they can perform a IQC, like an incoming quality control and inspection, say, hey, yeah, this can definitely be repaired or remanufactured. Then it goes onto a robot and that transports it to a troubleshooting station or test station, for example. And then this is sort of our the one of the more highly requested value-added solutions for robots now is this dunnage and recycling transportation. This is actually a customized fetch cart with a collapsible container on it, where you can essentially collect all the waste products around your facility. and we know now, right? There's especially in manufacturing, in distribution warehouses, there's a lot of unpacking, dunnage created every time you're picking something or loading something in. There's a lot of a waste that's generated, and a lot of times there's in large facilities there's a whole team dedicated just to remove this stuff. So we're seeing this as an add-on, and what I was kind of mentioning before, robots can multitask. So they may be doing, for example, VLM delivery, but they can also take out the trash. So it's just, I don't know. I think there's something appealing about a robot, handling the waste and stuff like that. But this is not a specific customer. Another customer that we have, very large facility, and that's where it starts to make sense, right? 1 million square feet or something like that. But you'll see they separate the plastic and foam from the cardboard and paper. They go to different routes and stuff like that. Generally, you're transporting something pretty far. It's going to be, somewhere in the loading dock. You're going to have a compactor, baler, and other types of equipment there. But essentially, the robots are on a schedule, or they can be pick up on demand, as I mentioned, with like a tablet tapped, or mobile device to say, hey, this container is ready for pickup. Robot picks it up and drops it off at the recycling station. Yeah, so that's all I had on my end, and I think we're going to pass it over to Brendan and see if we have any questions we can help answer.
Yep, thank you, David. Thank you, Manthan. Those are great presentations, a lot of information, a lot to digest there. I think I saw a few questions pop up in the Q&A. Manthan, I'm not sure if you were able to get to any of those in there, but I have a couple here as well.
I just see one.
Okay, yeah. So here's one now from Debbie. What's the battery life of AMRs before recharging?
David, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So, so generally we can get around 9 hours out of a full charge. So it's approximately one shift and a little bit. And so that's definitely something that will work with you on and when we scope the project, right? So we always want to kind of account for charge time, but but we're getting around 9 hours of life. Yeah. Okay, another question, and I know we're running out of time here, so we'll try and just fit in a couple more really quick. What is the procurement model for AMR solutions?
Yeah, I can take this one. So obviously, we're seeing a lot of demand for robot as a service nowadays. Obviously, what it is basically there is a monthly cost assigned to one robot per month, and the contracts really vary depending on the facility and the workflows we are solving. But there is RAS. Also, robots can be bought with CapEx. Obviously, a lot of customers are now shifting into RAS because there is that need of less and less capital expenditure to be spent on robotics. But yeah, that's the second one. And then a few others that we are currently evaluating as also charge per pick, right? Can we charge customers per pick and for your throughput? So that's something is in our roadmap, but today we offer RAS, robot as a service, and a CapEx model for these robots.
Thank you, Manthan. And then we have one more question here. Are there scenarios where replacing conveyor with AMRs have greater ROI? Are there scenarios where replacing conveyors with AMRs have greater ROI?
Yeah. So I know, David, you'll have something to add here, but
Sure.
I want to look into this picture from a broader perspective. Yes, the answer is yes, definitely there is. Plus, not just ROI, but what ends up happening is today you have X amount of workflows you're doing with your conveyors, which you'll replace with robots. But tomorrow you'll have some other set of workflows, right? Then we with AMRs are able to adapt easily depending on the changes of workflows. Tomorrow you're just doing some applications. In 1 year down the road, you want to increase the throughput, you want to change the application. That something becomes possible with a technology like AMRs.
Thank you, Manthan. There's a few more that are piling in here. We'll try and get to as many as possible. A quick one here. What is an AMR max load weight? And I guess that's probably going to depend on the type, but maybe David, you could take that one.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it definitely varies by the AMR type, as Brendan mentioned. Just to give you a quick idea, the Cart Connect AMR system that we talked about a little bit earlier, that payload capacity is around 150 pounds. You go up to our pallet transport 1500, and that can support a max weight of around 3,300 pounds or so, and a 48 by 48 pallet. So it definitely has a range there, and depending on your type of payload, you know, and the center of gravity, and those are things that we'll work with you on to maximize the load in there by robot, and then subsequently, you know, how many you may need in your operation. Yeah, that's a good one.
And we have time for just about one more here. Manthan, it looks like you're answering one as it's coming in. So we'll do this one last one from Greg Walker. Will AMRs be able to work in food production environments?
That's a really good question. I think it will kind of depend on what type. For sure, if it's packaged and dry, you know, I think there's opportunities there. One thing to be aware of that robots, the AMRs generally don't like temperature change. So if you're thinking something like a cold storage environment to a warm environment, for example, that's something we want to do a site assessment on, and it's primarily due to that temperature change and condensation, okay, which may impact their sensors. Our robots do have can operate in like a clean room environment, but in a specific like a food production environment, I think we'd have to do a site assessment just to ensure that we could do that. Yeah.
Great, thank you, David.
Yeah.
Thank you, Manthan. It looks like you answered that last question as well. So we just want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you to David and Zebra Technologies and Fetch Robotics for hopping on this webinar as our product experts. We really appreciate it. If you guys do have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to your account manager if you know who that is. Otherwise, this email on the slide here, robotics@barcodesinc.com, can be used as well, or visit our website. Again, thanks everyone. We hope to see you at our next webinar. We have actually a webinar on November 16th with our partner Newcastle Systems on return processes. So we hope to see everybody there. And again, thanks everybody for joining.